All right. So hopefully that gave you some time to think about these reflection questions and think about kind of the perspectives that we've shared and questions that we've shared already. And so I'll just share some of the thoughts that I had about these, and then we'll have time to take a couple of rounds because I wanted to deepen our conversation into some of the things that came up. So I'll go to kind of start with how to develop anti-oppression activism skills. And so I was reflecting upon some of the things that you said, Alex, about our intractable systems and how we have very little practice in systems design, and that's very true. And if we want to affect change, if we want to change the system, like we need to know what that actually entails, right? We can say we want to change the system, but there's a process, right? And there are specific things, like, I mean, there are people who have worked in this area for a long time. And so I guess my question that came up was, what are the steps to learning and becoming good at systems design? Because one of the books that we had as part of one of our courses for AFAPO is the paradox of organizational change. And so it's about behavioral systems analysis and kind of reframing how we, organize our systems and understand the interconnection between them. And one of our group members, Carly Shivers, was kind of helping us learn kind of the beginning parts of that. But I think it would be worth digging in deeper and investigating and developing a clear learning path for people on, like, how do you get that understanding, and how can we, just thinking about, like, how can we help facilitate that skill development for people, right? So, if we've identified that we don't have practice designing systems, like, okay, maybe that's an action that we can incorporate into the work that we're doing. How are we providing people with those learning opportunities to grow and develop those skills? Um, and then the other thing that I wanted to dig into a little bit more is the concept of constructing our identity, right? So Alex, you were talking about, we need to have a way to construct our identity, so we know who we are, and we know why we do what we do, but also having that strong sense of self so we can kind of transcend that, so we can kind of rise above just like our, who we are, and see the interconnection between others. So kind of my thought was, like, how do we construct that identity? Again, like, what are the steps? How could we guide people on that path, on that process of constructing that identity, if that's something that if that's something that people need to do or want to do? And then finally, kind of again, thinking more deeply into, like, okay, this has come up for us many times. We need to learn how to communicate better what we want, what we fear, what our trade-offs, and how we can, again, like, thinking about how can we facilitate those conversations, deepening those connections with people, um, is something that I think that, it's another thing, like, we say that that's important, but if we want to do what we say we want to do and help people develop their skills as accomplices, like, we should have some sort of, more formal, clear guidance for people. So, um, you know, thinking about that in terms of in relation to how we're kind of developing ourselves, but also supporting the development of others. I'm going to go ahead and just pass. I'm going to stop there and pass to Alex, and I'll save some of my other thoughts for later.
Thanks, Abby. I do have a response to that that also ties in with what Jamin was saying about people dismissing the idea of change as idealistic. And so I'll just lead into the spiel. Every society, every civilization, organization, even people on the individual level, we all need to face 4 fundamental liabilities. And Abby's heard this before, of course, the scarcity, known material limitations; disaster, unknown material limitations or interference; and then stagnation, known mental motivational limitations; and conflict, unknown or unpredicted mental limitations or interference. And all of human history has been shaped by how people deal with those things in different ways, usually either under-regulating them or over-regulating them. But those are trade-offs, and they tend to sacrifice something that people need. It's very unbalanced. So what we can do to make change that people can actually believe in, that people will recognize as constructive, and so they're not thinking about, let's see, I need to back up a bit. Most people may be cynical about change because they feel like the change is trying to find some sort of arbitrary balance that is just a more trial and error that won't ultimately create lasting change. So what we need to do is go beyond just balancing under and over regulation and constructively create the future that's stronger than what it is now. Create a future that can last and keep building itself up. So to do that, I've come up with 4 words that, like, the words themselves are not solutions. Like, a single word cannot describe all of the work and the thought that goes into actually being constructive, but it at least should help point us in the right direction. So to deal with scarcity, we need investment. It's not wasteful, it's not austere, it's spending resources to get more back, investing in the future, investing in people to be constructive. For disaster, we have preparation. So it's not going out and seeking danger, and it's not hiding from danger, but it's being aware of what can happen and equipping ourselves to be ready for it. Then for stagnation, we have transcendence, which would be using introspection and discipline to not just do whatever we feel like at the moment, but also to not be afraid of questioning what we're doing and what we believe. Because we know that even by asking questions and removing the assumptions that we have, we can still become better people. We don't have to just fall apart by doing that. And then last but not least, for conflict, ethics. Ethics for interpersonal conflict, ethics for conflict within ourselves. Ethics so that whatever group whatever group has conflicting, maybe mutually exclusive goals, we can at least treat each other in a way that makes the group itself still sustainable. And sometimes we can find creative solutions. Sometimes we just have to compromise. But in any case, we can at least hold ourselves and each other accountable for being compassionate, honorable, supportive, dedicated, or at least doing things we don't have to do to help each other out, so that if we don't get our way all the time, it's not catastrophic. So that's the, let's see, it ties in with what Jamin was saying about the changes that we can show people so that they can actually see how it's possible. And then what Abby was saying about how we can design systems. Those are the directions that we will need to go in sooner or later. And I pass to Jamin.
So I think that one thing that's coming up with this systems design is just the complexity there, you know, especially with some of these issues that we're talking about that are happening on a you know, country level or a global level, and all of the interlocking behavior contingencies there, and the degree to which, you know, like we would need to precisely identify variables and choose what's going to have the biggest impact, and get, you know, like people who are in power on board with that. And I think that, you know, when I'm reflecting on just the lack of systems to make decisions, I think that that's something that has continuously surprised me, you know, like when I'm in different arenas, just how people go about making decisions, and there doesn't seem to be any, you know, like systemic approach, and things do feel really haphazard. And, you know, sometimes I wonder, are folks in power just not aware of, you know, like that by taking a more precise approach where we're, you know, like really getting clear on what the variables are, and intervening, and just not looking that way at the systems level, like that's a weak repertoire? Or is it just that some of the folks that are in power are lacking motivation, because the system as it's currently designed is benefiting them and working for them? And so I think that I love the idea of us, you know, really precisely designing systems. And I think that there's a lot of power there. And, you know, it feels like overwhelming and complex sometimes to think about, like, well, what would that look like? And how do, you know, like, how does little old me, like, really influence change on a larger scale? I think that the other thing that came up in response to the, you know, idea of identity and transcendence, I think that when I'm thinking about identity, and not in a sense of like, you know, like I identify as, you know, like white, but like in the sense of like how we think about ourselves. So, you know, like if I think that I am good, then to look for what I am doing that isn't good, I have to engage with the idea that I'm not actually, you know, like showing up in the way that I identify. And I think that when we're looking at things like transcendence, and getting people to just engage with some of these questions and think about things outside of themselves and see how they might be perpetuating or influencing these systems, that there has to be a little bit of tolerance to the discomfort there, and letting go of some of the identities that, you know, like we may have, like I'm a good white woman, you know, like I'm woke, like those sorts of things that that I think are very much perpetuating a lot of the problems that we're seeing in behavior analysis, you know, specifically as it relates to ableism. I think that we came into this field wanting to do good and being helpers and being helpful. So to like even engage with the idea that we might actually, in our pursuit to help people, be doing harm, I think is really painful for folks to engage with. And I wonder what we can do to, you know, build up tolerance and have people let go of that, you know, like identity that I'm helping, you know, ABA is good, and really get at and look at like the ways that we might be harmful, such that we can keep exploring that. I'm going to pass to Abby.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that ties back to the thoughts I was having when I was, when I read that post in the comments in the ADR group, that, one of the posters pointed out that it was, there's still so much that needs to be done. There's still so much defensiveness that is happening. And I think that, Jamin, you articulated that perfectly. It's like that it is painful to reflect because it goes against our identity, like who we believe we are and the impact that we believe that we're having. And to truly embrace a perspective and an approach of what we call philosophical doubt. Like, yes, you can, believe what you believe and hold true to what you believe to be true, but be open to the the very likely possibility that you don't know the whole picture and you're not seeing everything for exactly, for what it really is. It's, through your lenses, through your filters. That's what that's how you're seeing the world. And so being able to, not be so like caught up in, what we believe to be true and be open to the very real possibility that we don't know everything and we have to be open to change and updating our beliefs and updating our approaches, even though it is hard. Like, it's hard to say some of these things. So we've, I think we're all three here have been involved in the Rutgers and Lovaas organizing effort. And some of that, and has brought up some painful things for people because we're having to reflect upon our own practices and the harms that we have caused in the service of doing good, right? So we've, our intentions were good. We want to help. We want to help reduce pain and suffering in the world. But we're not the white knights, we're not the we're not the saviors, we're not going to, we do have to, like, it's not about us and what we want and what we, our tricks that, our tricks in our toolbox. So being able to take a step back from that and sit in that discomfort and take that ownership is critical. So I thank you, Alex, again for doing the kind of reviewing and kind of like bringing us back to kind of the liabilities and the approaches to addressing those liabilities, because I think that that's something that I would like to kind of bring more to the forefront into how we're organizing our discussion, is really trying to dig into what are the scarcities, what are the disaster, what are like indicators of scarcity, disaster, stagnation, and conflict, right? To orient us to the problem, but then also quickly pivoting to, what are we actually doing to invest? What investments are we making in time, energy, and other resources? What do we need to do to prepare? And kind of, what does preparedness look like? And how how is that going to, how are we going to, again, move past the talking about the need to change the status quo and actually the doing of, changing that. And reflecting upon our own stagnation. This is, we have talked about this a lot, where it's like it's so common to get stuck and stagnant in just your own little bubble and this own kind of your own little protective circle. But we're not going to be able to move forward without that. And then when it comes to ethics, I think that that's It's something that we, I think that we have some tools, we have some people who are doing work in that area that I think would be good for us to tap into, because there is work going into ethical accountability systems that are specifically designed to be like sensitive to some of these issues that we're talking about, like being able to identify when things are not happening as they should, when things are out of balance. And so I think that'll be important to bring in. And yeah, so let's see, I don't know where my thought was going. So I am going to Gelmo myself. I'm going to good enough. Let's move on and pass to Alex. I've got one more last thing to share, but I've got to gather my thoughts a little bit.
Sounds good. Thanks, Abby. Let's see. I need to move to the next stage of this as well, because it's really tricky to apply these constructive virtues, because it always requires us to give up something in order to build more of the system. And let's see. Sorry, I was processing all of that, and I was trying to relate it to what I've got going on here, trying to figure out what I need to do. I'm going to pause for a second. I think that, well, this is something that has been affecting my thoughts a lot, and so I'm not entirely sure how directly it ties in, but I think it'll be something to consider. Something that I've been struggling with for the past ever is the balance between observation and implementation. Because I have been very frustrated with just humans in general, because I have noticed that there's a tendency to not reevaluate what people believe, how they see things, except only recently did I discover that I have the opposite problem, that I constantly peel back my assumptions, and that makes it very difficult to actually do things. And so in order to help people move forward, we are going to have to supply them with assumptions that they can safely make. And I do have tools for how to do that, but that's going to be, it's I think what's holding back a lot of these movements, because I keep going from, I alone have the secrets that will change the world, and then I look and I see all these people who are doing all this great work. I'm thinking, oh wow, those people are actually like just as insightful as I am and much harder working. So what, like, we should be moving a lot faster than we are, should we not? And so then I feel very insecure, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. But I think there's still ways that we can remove some limiting factors and